Three, two, one. In this episode of Quality Time with Family Ties, we learn that every episode of Quality Time with Family Ties includes a fabulous backdoor finish.
Hey, everybody. Welcome to Quality Time with Family Ties. I am one of your hosts, Paul Packler, and with me, as always, is Master Pepper, Corey Pepper himself.
Boy, things really changed because it used to sound a little different there, the opening. You know, the opening always was, I'm one of your hosts, I'm Scott Jones, and I'm here as always with Paul Packler, and I sat here like a fucking moron with my thumb up my rectum. And now that Scott has, and I'm safe to say, abandoned us, I feel,
yes.
And I think I'm going to start to go to therapy about it because I feel like I'm having abandonment issues now.
I think going to therapy and when people should go to therapy is a great theme for today's episode.
First of all, you look unbelievably clear. You're on Nikki's computer tonight? You're on your girlfriend's computer? Is this how it's going? Is that why?
No, I'm on my phone. I guess my phone is just amazing.
Your camera is amazing. It's so much different from when I'm watching you normally on your computer.
My God, it's a drug dealer's burner phone. I don't even have this isn't even a smartphone.
It's a fabulous picture. It's incredibly clean.
Thank you. Is it too clean? Is it like HD where everybody has to put on more makeup because they look like shit?
No, don't worry about
that. Wait, is that a yes or a no? I can't tell.
No. Don't worry about that. I wouldn't concern myself if I were you.
Now I'm more concerned.
I'm sorry. I'm just trying to make you paranoid. This was the first episode where, you know, when I'm watching, I always watch on Amazon, on Amazon Prime. And when I pulled up the episode, I always get like a little synopsis of what the episode is. And I foolishly read it. And this was the first time that the synopsis actually made me want to kill myself.
Oh boy. Oh, there we go, folks. We're in it now.
I just read the synopsis and I thought to myself, if I'm going to watch 22 minutes of Gary David Goldberg crap about suicide, I think I want to beat him to the punch and just off myself instead of watching this piece of shit.
Yeah, it's so this is season 6, episode 22, I want to say. What's the title? It's epic.
Well, it's called Spring Reminds Me, aka Rosalie's Legacy. I have a theory, and I've had a theory. You know, I always think this about almost every episode of Family Ties. When we range into the serious stuff, I always think to myself, did Gary David Goldberg suffer in some way a friend losing a child to suicide?
It seems very out of the norm of other episodes of Family Ties, like the way that this is structured, the way that the plot progresses, and the focus, and that it's so serious. It seems very personal.
It does. It seems personal. The title seems personal. Everything about it seems personal.
Yeah. This episode was one of the rare episodes. I think there's maybe been 5, definitely less than 5, where I have to keep looking away from the screen because it's making me so uncomfortable.
Mm-hmm.
I couldn't watch it. I thought it was a bad episode, and I thought it was that for such an important topic, they did it a real disservice.
I just feel like somebody read too much Sylvia Plath.
Yeah. I'd rather spend 22 minutes just reading Sylvia Plath. I feel like you would get a lot more out of it.
You could have called this, you know, Alex Interrupted or Mallory Interrupted.
Wait, did she write Girl Interrupted?
No, I'm just going in the other suicide direction. My suicide references.
Oh, okay, gotcha.
You know, we opened this one with the B plot in the living room with Steven doing. First of all, I think this is hilarious. I think we have to we have to acknowledge the elephant in the room that we were supposed to do an episode last week, but we had technical difficulties and we couldn't. Now, Paul, I'm saying speaking correctly, you didn't watch the episode until yesterday. Is that correct?
That's correct.
I, of course, watched the episode a week and a day ago. So I have notes on the episode that I saw a week and a day ago. But as I've explained many times on this show, this doing Quality Times with Family Ties podcast is like childbirth. I immediately forget about the show so that I'll come back next week and do another one. Because if I actually think about it after we do it, I'm never going to do another episode of Quality Time Family Ties. I can't watch it anymore. I just can't.
Is that, Corey, let me just stop you right there. Is that some kind of male prerogative that I feel like women remember childbirth after the fact? Do they not?
I think they don't remember. They're supposed to secrete a hormone which actually has them forget about the pain of childbirth.
Wow.
So that women will have more children.
That's smart.
Yeah. That way they don't think, oh shit, that really hurt. No fucking way.
Wow. That's like me going bowling or something.
But you went bowling once and you're never going again because it was so painful?
Exactly. Except for that last time that I went that I had such a good time because I broke 100.
Yeah, you hit 107 if I remember correctly, and then crowed about it on Facebook like you were 8 years old.
I mean, I do that when I buy a suit. I do that when I score 100 in bowling.
Did you have bumpers or no bumpers? Did you play bumpers?
I had bumpers. No, I didn't. I didn't have bumpers.
Okay, thank God. Okay, because you hit 107 with bumpers. It's like...
I think they have to put you down then. I think
you're very, very special. So the B plot of this thing starts with Stephen and his magic tricks, and they beat this one to death almost immediately, where it's clear that Stephen has been doing magic tricks for his children, one child at a time.
So weird. Why? What? Who thought of this?
I don't know.
They spent so much money on props. It's crazy.
And Alex and Jen come in and they see that Stephen is doing tricks for Andy, and obviously they've lived through this before, and none of Stephen's tricks work, and that's pretty much our introduction to the B plot. We got the A plot immediately. Elise and Mallory. Elise announces that company is coming, and company is coming in the form of Evelyn Mitchum, who is coming to visit the Keatons for the first time since her teenage daughter, Rosalie, a high school friend of Mallory's, committed suicide.
Yes. Apparently, they lived across the street from each other, much like in the same way that Greg from My Name is Alex.
Yes.
Is Mallory's best friend that we've never met before.
Thank you. Once again, I wonder if this is something that was in fashion sitcom-wise at the time and has changed, or if it's just always been a bad idea. And this show does it so all the time, where they do a show about people that we have never met and will never meet.
You mean like with the daughter, you mean?
Well, yeah. I just think, don't you guys have any foresight to write an episode earlier in the season and then have recurring characters that you could then have storylines about, instead of having just guest stars who come in the middle of some mysterious story that started off screen, even though we've been watching 6 years of Family Ties?
Yeah, it's a weird thing that I think might have been more prevalent back then in the 80s and stuff like that with sitcoms and before. But it's like that when we first started Family Ties, the thing that stuck out to us is how perfect a family the Keatons are. I remember for the first Christmas episode we talked about it, where it's like they don't really mess things up. Everything works out at the end, and they're the perfect family, and everyone wants to be like them. And so it seems like with the Keatons, they can never have big problems. They never really have um, after school problems
So we bring
because
those in externally from the outside world. We have to introduce them through others.
exactly. And you just don't see that anymore. Even in family sitcoms, it's like, no, these people aren't perfect and they can have problems. And it's not like Stephen and Elise and Alex and Mallory and Jennifer don't have problems, but it's a certain type of like they're perfect and the outside world is the problem.
Um, so Mallory, of course, flips out that Evelyn Mitchum is coming to town, and Elise sort of advises her to to act normally. Just try not to mention it.
I don't even know where to begin with this, Corey, because like I don't know. First off, what happened? Apparently, Evelyn and what's your daughter's name?
Rosalie.
Evelyn and Rosalie moved away from Columbus to New York City. And that's like one of the first things they talk about when Evelyn gets there is how exciting New York is and Mallory wants to go shopping at Bloomingdale's and all that kind of stuff. But like I guess they moved away when they were living in New York. I guess Evelyn and her mom still lived together at that point in an apartment somewhere when she ended up committing suicide because she was depressed or whatever, because we never really find out what the details are there. And it's just like there are so many unanswered questions as to the events that I
Oh,
don't I
hold on just one second, Paul. I'm so sorry. This just in breaking news, as they do on CNN. Breaking news. Scott Jones fucking cares about us. He's asking, "Are
oh
you okay recording?" So now,
oh my god.
oh, you know what? He shouldn't have. He fucking shouldn't have, Paul. He shouldn't have. He shouldn't have set me off. I would have been fine talking family ties for 40 minutes. I wouldn't have mentioned Scott Jones bailing on us. I wouldn't have mentioned the fact that we are now starting officially a new contest on this show, Paul. I don't know what people are going to win, but here's the contest, okay? The contest every week is going to be what time did Scotty bail? That's the new contest. Because, ladies and gentlemen, or just gentlemen, if Damon's the only one listening, listen to me for just one moment here. Listen to me. We schedule this show within an inch of its life. Paul and Corey, we take time out of our busy lives to bring you an episode of Family Ties and its critique every fucking week. But Scott Jones seems to have such a full life filled with children and work. Oh, that's right. I have children and I work too. But I still manage to watch the show every week and come here and do this, not just for you, Paul, not just for Damon, but for Barbara and Bryant and all the wonderful people at Fanbase Press who want us to do this show every week. So we post it every week, and I feel a responsibility while Scott's at Mommy and Me class tonight, making sure that Henry knows how to throw a ball to Daddy. Okay?
Corey, I think his text might have been that he's available to record. Do you want to maybe invite him or text him to see if he wants to join?
Oh, I absolutely. Let me just text him here and see if he wants to join us. That would be such fun if he's home. Are you guys all right recording? Sure. Sure. Want to join us? Watch this, ladies and gentlemen, or Damon, as he rejects us. Sure. Want to join us? Sure. No, what are you doing, Scott? No, I'm sorry. Henry's puking. No, I'm sorry. We're getting a training bra for Maisie. She's 3. Oh, no. Henry's in college, Valley College class. Very important tonight that we get the fucking 5:30 class. What fucking 5:30 class is there? What class is there at 5:30? What kind of ceramic class? I'm foaming at the mouth. I'm foaming at the fucking mouth.
Oh, this episode has already gone off the rails and I love it.
So, by the way, I texted Scott, sure, do you want to join us? Have we gotten a response? No, I'm sorry. He's not getting reception at Gymboree, I guess.
He'll definitely get back to us tomorrow, I'm sure.
So, here was the thing about going back to the fabulous episode that we watched. You just were talking about the unanswered questions. That's the problem with this whole episode, Paul, is I don't know whether they were intending to be ambiguous, whether it was so deeply personal that he didn't want to gossipy give all the grisly details. But it was sort of left to us, the viewer, to connect the dots. And I'm going to tell you how I connected the dots, okay? No, I'm still in traffic, coming back with family. From where, Scott? From San Francisco? You're in Los Angeles. How far is Henry taking a class away? Is he Berkeley? For God's sake. 3 blocks away on Ventura Boulevard. You could jog home and make the fucking broadcast.
Corey, we only have a couple more episodes left in season 6. Aren't you excited?
I'm very excited. I am. I'm really looking forward to it. So here's how I connected the dots. Here, I just want to tell you how. Now I'm getting on my computer. Okay, so here's how I connected the dots. So Evelyn and Rosalie moved to New York. Now, they never tell us for what reason, but they allude to the fact, currently with one cry. Oh, I'm glad we have an update. This just in, breaking news. Currently one crying baby and a 5-year-old who has to take a piss. Well, thank you for the bodily function update. My prostate is swollen and I have heart disease. Okay?
Oh, now he's rubbing it in.
Yeah, and that's still better than this episode. Well, thanks, Scott. Thanks for making me smell the dog shit that is this episode.
Let me tell you guys what I did to get here tonight. I was in Midtown shooting a sketch for some friends, and then I ran out of the bar and got on the subway. I got on the wrong subway, so then I had to get out. I was supposed to take the N or W to get to Astoria. Instead, I took the R, which is a different Astoria train. Mm-hmm. And so it takes you well out of the way of where I needed to end up. So I got off the subway, and then I got into a cab. So I paid extra to get to the apartment in order to start recording.
And let me just think, this was how Scott reasoned things out at 2:45 when he texted us. So if anybody had 2:45 in the office pool today, that was the time. That's 2:45 Pacific time when we were scheduled to record at 6 o'clock Pacific time. So he's coming in pretty fairly close to his all-time record of cutting it close to bailing on us at the last moment. But when he bailed on us today at 2:45, he had to tell us, of course, that Henry got into a very special class. A special class. What kind of special class is that for a 5-year-old? Really?
I don't know. Origami or
Lego? I don't know. Is there a special Lego class that Henry's in? I'm not really sure. So getting back to this episode, here's my thought process. So they move to New York. Now, they do mention something about how they found New York to be so exciting, the shopping, the museums. They mention that. So I have a feeling that Mom, Evelyn, instigated moving to New York with Rosalie. And then once they got to New York, Mom was maybe leading the museum and shopping life, while Rosalie regretted the move to New York, was depressed, missed her friends back in Dayton, and went into some sort of a teen funk, which resulted in her suicide. And thus, Mom has some guilt for A, moving to New York, B, ignoring her daughter after she moved to New York.
Yes. And that, I think, is the best read of what's going on in this episode from the evidence of what's said by multiple characters throughout this episode.
But it's really a matter of connecting the dots and sort of imagining things, because they give you almost nothing, and yet they babble incessantly about Rosalie in the second act.
Yeah, it's just constantly talking about her, and I think at the outset, let's just say I am not a mental health professional. Corey, are you a mental health professional?
I'm not a mental health professional, but I think mom needs to find some sort of closure here, because she's clearly not over her daughter's suicide.
In the slightest. And we're meeting this character at a point that she's about to have some sort of breakdown. Like,
and she sort of kind of does at the end of the first act with Mallory at the or where is it, at the ballet, not at the denouement of this episode. She sort of has a
yeah. But like she immediately upon meeting her, she's already calling Mallory
right off the bat, she's calling her Rosalie.
Yes. So I mean, this is not a well person. Like, she's going through a crisis.
And they sort of kind of beat us over the head with the drama stick right from the very beginning. Shall we discuss the actress who plays Evelyn Mitchum?
Yeah, because she looked very familiar.
I've got some good stuff on her.
Go for it.
It's the actress's name is Constance McCashin. She was a minor celebrity during the 70s and early 80s as a regular on Falcon Crest? Knots Landing, which was the spinoff of Dallas on CBS. One of them was on Thursday nights at 10 o'clock, and one of them was on Friday nights at 10 o'clock, if I remember correctly. Yeah. And she was on from the very beginning and had, I believe, an 8-year run as a regular on Knots Landing. Now, that's how she might be familiar to you. Now, she's familiar to me for a completely different reason. When I came out here in 1978 to film a miniseries for NBC, Studs Lonigan, I was introduced to the actor who is my older version. I've told this story on this broadcast. His name was Sam Weisman. Sam Weisman has directed countless episodes of Family Ties.
I think the most. He might be the most frequent director.
I would think him, Will McKenzie are probably the two most frequent directors of Family Ties. And when I met Sam Weisman, the very first night I knew Sam, he invited me back to his home to meet his wife. And when I met his wife, it was indeed the lovely Constance McCashin.
Wow.
One thing that I didn't know until I actually got to Sam's home and met the woman he was calling Connie, my wife Connie, and it was Constance McCashin. When I went there, I was like, Connie is Constance McCashin? I went, oh my God. And it was like he was reacting like, oh, you must know her from Knots Landing. And she was looking at me and I was looking at her because we knew each other from summer stock in 1971 at the Gateway Playhouse in Bellport, Long Island. I was 14 years old. It was my first summer of professional summer stock. She was 23. I figured out the years since then. And she was one of the lead dancers in a season of musical theater summer stock. So I knew Connie McCashin in 1971 in summer stock, then re-met her again in 78, 79 through Sam, and now see her again popping up on Family Ties in this episode in a really substantial guest star performance.
Yeah, I mean, they give her a very meaty part. It's a terrible part, but she's good in it.
Did Sam direct this episode?
That I'm not sure. I didn't check.
I didn't check that either because I didn't bother to really look until I saw her pop up. And then I was like, I know how she got the role. And obviously they've been waiting to use her on something substantial. A
It's
she
definitely the type of. Oh, sorry.
Yeah, I was gonna say she's an A-list guest star, and B,
Yeah,
his wife. So
yeah. It's the type of role that you would see, I think, on a lot of like Law and Order shows where it's like the guest star who is trying to get like an Emmy nomination.
it looks like an Emmy nomination for best guest star.
Exactly.
Second scene, we go into the kitchen. Um, uh, Someone's doing dishes alone. Who's doing dishes all alone?
Mallory, I think.
Yeah. Oh, and Evelyn is there, and she says to Mallory, you always had a great eye for fashion, which is so funny because we are always talking about all the people on the show that diss Mallory's talent as if it's not a real talent. And yet Evelyn, who we've never met before, but has known Mallory for years, even she knows that Mallory actually has a true talent for fashion.
It's yeah. The Mallory needs to get the hell out of this house and move to New York City is the lesson in this episode.
Absolutely. That's the only way she's ever going to be appreciated because everyone here is just going to make fun of her as being stupid.
Exactly.
And there are clearly very warm memories between Evelyn and Mallory and Rosalie and growing up as teenage girls and mother daughter. And there are letters that were written back and forth after Rosalie and Evelyn moved to New York. There was a series of letters that they wrote back and forth, obviously pre-internet days, pre-email and texting days. You had to write letters to communicate or phone calls. And this is when Evelyn sort of springs on us that Rosalie was never really happy in New York City. She just wasn't happy there.
Yeah, which is fine. And I just again, because like with the whole suicide thing, I don't think it's this episode tries to make it, oh, she was just unhappy, and then later in the final moments that she was such a sensitive person that that adding the two together was this like combustible mixture that caused her to commit suicide. And I don't think that's how it works. And I don't want to be the one to like go out on a limb and explain suicide or suicide ideation or whatever. But like she was obviously having a lot of like mental illness that caused her to do this. And they treat it very like, oh, she was a very sensitive poet and she didn't like New York, so that's what happened.
It's in a very facile manner. They treat it as if there's not nuances to teen suicide, which we all know that it's greatly nuanced and I can understand Evelyn with the classic I can't believe I didn't notice, the classic guilt, the parent, I can't believe I didn't. And yes, the parent does have to live with that kind of guilt. And I get that. But once again, I have to remind us we're watching a 22-minute situation. So I don't know how appropriate this depth of character and davening and bemoaning and beating of the chest, which we get a whole shitload of from here on out.
Yes, exactly.
So this is the point where Evelyn asks Mallory out on a date. She sort of says, "Hey, let's go to a museum and shopping, just like I used to do with Rosalie, and you can even bring Nick along." So now Nick is going to go, and Nick's crazy about museums and shopping, so this is just going to be great. So Nick's going to go along on a museum and shopping trip with Evelyn. And this is really the finest moment in the episode because this is where we notice that they keep the studio very, very cold and Mallory's wearing sort of a sheer sweater. So God bless America.
Standing at attention.
God bless you, Justine Bateman. Even 30 years later, I'm still aroused by watching you in a cold studio.
Now, is this the moment? Is this the moment when Elise says to Mallory that it seems like God, why can't I think of her name? Evelyn is seems that she has some issues that she needs to work through,
Yeah.
and Mallory might not be up to the task.
Mm-hmm.
And so Mallory says, "Well, I feel like I should help her because she's my friend. Both of them are my friend."
Yes.
And then Elise says something that sticks out to me as indicative of a certain time and thought process where she says, "You don't owe her that." And I was like, that's very fucked up. And that's a very fucked up way to think about it. And that's a very fucked up thing to say to your daughter. Like, the problem isn't that, because, like, she's saying you don't owe her this kind of emotional heavy lifting.
Right.
And that's not it. What Elise should say is, you don't have the tools to help her with the emotional heavy lifting.
At 19, that's right. This isn't your burden to lift for her.
And the you don't owe her that is like the Reagan ideology fully formed in a person, where it's like, we don't owe each other shit.
No,
If you're not my family, then fuck you.
that's right. It's the beginning of the individual self-obsession in this country, where everyone just worries about themselves.
Yes. And I've never seen it where, because it's something that Alex does, and they always put a lampshade on it where it's like, that's his whole thing.
Right.
But this is one of the first times that you see a character internalize that ideology, in a way where it's not commented upon. It's actually supposed to be the right thing to be said.
Mm-hmm. And then there's some little get out of the scene joke where the lights go off, and once again it's Dad who's doing magic in the other room.
And he's like, sorry, didn't. And the B plot in this episode is so insane, and it's like from a different sitcom.
It is, and yet it provides my favorite moment in the episode, which is coming up very soon.
Oh, I think this is the commercial break, right?
No, we still have one more scene left.
Okay.
So we're back from shopping. They're coming back from shopping, lots of bags. You know, their hair is up and like ponytails. Boy, they had a good time. It was like girls' day out. Boy, it was really fun. Nick is eating Haagen-Dazs out of a carton, which nobody would do at anybody else's house. They would only do it if they lived alone.
Mm-hmm.
You go to someone else's home and take Haagen-Dazs out of the freezer and start eating out of a carton.
No.
Ridiculous. There's sort of an invite given here. Oh, you've got to come to New York to visit us, Mallory and Nick. You'll have such a good time. Dad comes in and he's all tied up in ropes, you know, like the old Houdini rope trick. And Evelyn is actually the first person to give positive reinforcement about Nick, which is sort of interesting, because usually we get the, wow, Nick's such a loser. Yo, Nick's an idiot. He'll never amount to anything. But Evelyn sort of likes Nick. He likes the creative side of Nick.
She's actually, with regard to her relationship with Mallory and Nick, is probably the best person on this show.
Yes, absolutely.
And it's funny that Nick doesn't mention that his sister lives in New York and he spent a summer there one time.
That is correct. Evelyn lets up another one of her slips of the tongue here, the second time, leading to the giant psychotic break in the second act, where she says, she's raving about Nick to Elise, and she says Rosalie is so happy with him.
Uh-oh. Wah, wah. Freud, your Freudian slip is showing.
And then they sit down, and Elise is having sort of a cry over Rosalie's death with Stephen at the table with Evelyn, and Evelyn's having a cry over Rosalie's death, and it ends with the only moment that I thought was really sort of funny and sweet in the whole episode was Stephen's hanky, because he's been doing magic tricks, is the old hanky magic trick of a long hanky, and they pull it and they keep on pulling it. And it sort of works for me because it's not sad, it's sort of funny, and it's sort of like, okay, that's why he's been doing magic, just to set up this one joke.
Yeah. It's nice. It's like a sort of a Neil Simon type humor.
Right. It reminded me of something. Okay, it's a solid joke. It was going to work no matter how you toss it. And the looks on their faces were pretty darn good. And this is where we actually end the first act. So we can take a commercial break, I would think, right about now.
Absolutely. And with that, we'll be right back. And we're back. Here we are. This is it. This is the big climactic finish of this episode.
You think Scott's still stuck in traffic? Do you think you worry about the traffic? it must have been tough getting all the way from Studio City back to Sherman Oaks. It must have been wow. It must have taken hours to get
Is
back.
that a far drive? I'm not aware of what the geography is like. What give me the rundown of what that would normally take you.
Normally, in let me see, with absolutely no traffic, it would probably take him 10 or 12 minutes to drive that. And with traffic, it would probably take somewhere between 15 and 17 minutes. So fuck you, Scotty. Get home and get on the fucking broadcast.
Wow. Have you ever, Corey, speaking of driving around LA, you ever been to Brentwood?
I have.
I've never been.
My eldest son went to middle school in Brentwood.
Oh, I'm sorry, fancy pants.
He went to his education. Griffin went from his elementary school was up in Bel Air. He was in an elementary school up in the hills above LA, right above Sherman Oaks. They're the hills of Bel Air. So you go up Roscommare Road, and when you come down the other side of Roscommare Road, it's Sunset in Bel Air. Really,
Oh.
really ritzy titsy, but it's right at the top of the hill. So that was his elementary school. So that elementary school fed into a middle school in Brentwood, and then it fed into a high school in the Pacific Palisades. So my eldest went to just incredibly good public schools in Los Angeles. So very lucky, never paid a penny for him.
Holy shit. Did he happen to go to school with like Katie Tur, the journalist that's on MSNBC now?
I like Katie Tur. Where's she from? Is she from here, from Brentwood?
She is. Her now mom, because she's trans, was a journalist in the 90s. She was one of the journalists that was in the helicopter recording the car chase, the O.J. Simpson slow car chase.
So Katie Tur's mom is a trans photojournalist?
I don't know if she's a photojournalist anymore, but she was. She appears in the OJ documentary, that 8-part series thing, or this.
So this is her biological father. Now
Yes.
her mother is
Yes.
is a wow. I didn't know that. And was his name by any chance? It wasn't Bob Tur, was it?
It might be.
Because I remember a journalist for NBC News by the name of Bob Tur.
Yeah, I think that. Yeah, I think that might be. Yeah, that might be her old name, whatever. But like, because Katie Tur is in her, let's say, late 20s or early 30s. So I was like, is she about the same age as Griffin or not?
He's about the same age. I have to find out. We start this second act with the dad. Oh, he's doing more magic. Oh, he's really into the magic. He's making Jennifer disappear. And we find out that Mallory and Nick are joining Evelyn for their 6th night in a row out on the town. And you know what they're doing? They're doing everything you know they love. Tonight it's ballet.
Woohoo! And I'm surprised at this. I'm surprised that Mallory was not into ballet before.
Mm-hmm. But I'm not surprised that Nick couldn't give a rat's ass.
Yeah, I mean, I thought he would be into it more because he's an artsy guy. He does sculptures and things like that. I would always think that it would be a more interesting choice to have him be really into it. Like it would be funnier and it would be more interesting for his character.
Right. And we realize that Mallory realizes that she is trying to help Evelyn through this rough patch. So that's why they're doing everything to try and help her. And of course, Jen comes out of the box. She's trying to fuck with her father over this magic trick and this ridiculous B plot that's way too intricate.
Yeah, they have like the box from the first episode of Arrested Development that Job puts his dad into, the Aztec tomb or whatever. And so like he puts Jennifer in, he spins it around, and like Michael Gross seems like he might have done magic before because when he's dealing with all these props and stuff, he seems pretty like adroit with them.
He does.
So
We
it turns out
yeah.
that Jennifer ran out the back in
Ah.
order to fuck with him, which was a nice funny bit.
Mm-hmm. So we're now at the ballet in scene 2 here, and obviously they're a little bored, both Nick and Mallory. Nick's actually sleeping, if I remember correctly.
Mm-hmm.
Nick is sleeping. Mallory's bored. She asks if they have any OJ at the snack bar at intermission.
Whew, I totally missed that. I wish I hadn't because I would be so excited if that
Yeah, she
were.
said to Nick, she goes, "Can I get you anything?" And remember when Nick leaves for the convenient moment to leave Evelyn and Mallory alone, she asks Nick if he could get her an OJ.
Wow.
And then Evelyn admits that the ballet isn't very good. And of course, I thought to myself, in Dayton, Ohio, what were you expecting? The fucking Joffrey? Yeah, it was Miss Sasha's ballet studio doing scenes from Swan Lake, and oh, it's not very good. It's not very good. Um, she appears to be reliving her life with Rosalie through these evenings out with Mallory, and it's clear that Rosalie hurt her mother terribly by committing suicide, and she Mallory sort of defends Rosalie, and and then after she defends Rosalie, Evelyn sort of reacts as if she is Rosalie and sort of starts to yell at her and tell her how upset she is with her for doing what she's done to her. And Mallory ends up screaming, "I'm not Rosalie, Evelyn," in a great dramatic moment that is inappropriate for any half-hour sitcom.
Absolutely. Like that. So like the three big points of what you just hit is the fact that like Evelyn blames herself. Evelyn also almost simultaneously blames Rosalie. Evelyn also is not able to tell between reality and like her own
And
wild flights of fancy.
and that's
This is a woman who needs professional help.
no, no. And that's probably why they dropped a few Rosalies on us in the first act to set up the fact that her crazy doesn't come out of nowhere, that we're seeing sort of somebody on the verge of a breakdown.
Yeah, because that's the thing. It's not like she's schizophrenic, and that's what they're trying to make her almost seem that way. It's like, no, she just has real issues that no one, no friend, no compatriot, no anyone except for a professional could help a person going through this kind of trauma.
Absolutely. This is just something that is, and this was a very, very long scene in the lobby of the ballet of the theater where they went to the ballet, where Mallory is very shaken up by being thought of as Rosalie, and she splits, and Nick is requested to take Evelyn home.
I thought Justine Bateman in that moment where she's like freaked out and stuff like that and just really on edge seemed very real. Like that's because it's such a strange and crazy circumstance. The way that Justine Bateman played off of that felt
Mhm.
like the way anyone normally would from such a heightened circumstance.
Absolutely. Hey, I gotta leave the screen for one moment. We'll edit this out, but I gotta do something in the kitchen for a second. I'll be right back.
Okay.
Back.
Cool.
So we're back on this last scene. We're back with the finale of the magic B plot, where Stephen is now making balloon animals, which was the first time I did agree with you, Paul, where it looks like maybe he had made balloon animals before.
Mm-hmm.
And here we have exactly what I wrote down in my notes: a very long ass scene about a person we've never met. I don't know how to say it any clearer. I have no interest in two people on a situation comedy talking memory of somebody we've never met and will never meet. That will never, ever be interesting.
This is Gary David Goldberg at his worst, where he has the two people before like, telling stories about a person. Like, hey, I'll never forget the time when when Becky and I went running through the fields back. Corey, you remember Becky, and I remember she used to say to me all the time, "Paul, you run so fast." And her hair was always in braids, and I always thought that was so funny. And like the boredness that you feel right now is every special episode of Family Ties. They pick the person that you're never going to see, and then tell you 3 stories about them from when they were kids.
Blows my mind.
Like, how did they get away with this?
I don't understand who thought this was interesting. It's just not. And we get this long ass Mallory story, which she's just fine with, about cherry pie at McDonald's, and it's just miserable. And I don't understand why I have to sit and listen about somebody who I don't care about, who I'm never going to meet. It just matters not to me.
And I don't remember this sort of dynamic on any other sitcom where they
No.
tell you stories about a person.
And this leads into, as we introduced it tonight, one of their patented backdoor finishes. Yes, every episode of Family Ties features a backdoor finish. And while you perverts out there may think I'm talking about something else, all I'm referring to is at the end of every episode of Family Ties, someone comes in the back door who needs to apologize to somebody else.
See, I don't qualify. I don't self-identify as a pervert, and I thought at the top of the show that that's where you were going with it. I'm glad that it didn't turn out that way. That's great.
It's just a backdoor finish. It's just another one. Yeah, it's like the money shot for this show. Is the money
See,
here?
now this time, now I think that you are going for it the other way.
Okay, maybe a little, but you understand, my money shot is somebody coming in the back door here.
I think that's most people's.
We get it in every episode. In this one, we get Evelyn coming to apologize. Nick's brought Evelyn home. Evelyn's going to be left alone with Mallory and apologize and sort of have the self-realization that she needs to get some help.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, that's it. The only other thing I want to say about this episode, because I really hated this episode, is it's shocking to me that Elise, who they were next door neighbors or like lived in the same like street as Evelyn and Rosalie. I just can't believe that in this episode, Elise doesn't play a bigger role because she's a mom.
Yeah, they sort of leave out the bond that the mothers would have had, and they focus entirely the story on Rosalie and Mallory.
Yes, and I think that that's a real missed opportunity, and it only makes the episode worse. It could have given this a lot more interesting directions to go, but at the same time, this episode doesn't deserve much more thought.
Not much more.
So, on that note, I don't have the notes up, but let's see if I can wing it.
Wow.
For questions and comments, please email us at qualitytimewithfamilyties@gmail.com. You can also rate and review our show on iTunes. Please do it. It helps people find the show, and wouldn't that be great?
It would be great.
We'd like to thank our host and producer, Barbara Dillon, which is my sister's name. She did stuff, and I'm very thankful for that. Also, Bryant Dillon edits our show, and he's the president and co-founder of Fanbase Press, as well as Barbara also being that. You can follow Bryant at Comic Book Slayer on Twitter, and you can follow each of us on Twitter. I'm at Paul Packler.
I'm at Corpep, and Scott's at Follow Jones.
Also, we'd like to thank Perry Adams, who beautifully performs Family Ties in our theme song without us. You can check her website out, perryadams.com. And finally, we'd like to thank Sean Foster, our graphic designer, for designing our logo. That was pretty good, right?
Really, I was just going to say he did very, very well. I'm very impressed.
I kind of trimmed the fat on some of those.
But it was good. But it was really
Thanks.
good.
All right. Bye, everybody.
La 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 la.